I caught one tiny mistake, one slip of the tongue, and suddenly the last 3 years of my life unraveled like a cruel joke. Everyone tells me to move on, but how do you move on from this? Welcome to Reddit Toxic Family Telltales channel. New episode every day. The electrician walked into my house like it was any other day, but then something strange happened. He looked at my wife, really looked at her, and his whole expression shifted. His tool belt rattled as he froze mid-step. And then he said a name that wasn't hers. Crystal? My wife's hand stopped halfway to her lips, coffee mug trembling just slightly. Her eyes widened and her voice went sharp and high. My name is Diana, she said, forcing a little laugh that didn't sound like her at all. The guy flushed beet red. He stammered, scratching at his neck. Sorry. You just look exactly like someone I know. Crystal. Before I could even process, Diana set down her mug so fast it sloshed onto the counter and excused herself to the bathroom. The sound of the door clicking shut was way too quick, way too rehearsed. The electrician kept fumbling with his screwdriver, but I caught him glancing at the hallway where she'd disappeared. Over and over again. Finally, I snapped. How do you know my wife? The guy's hand jerked, his screwdriver clattered onto the tile, and he scrambled like a guilty kid to pick it up. I don't, he muttered, not even meeting my eyes. I was just confused. But his whole body screamed liar. When he left, Diana came back out, calm as ever, pretending like nothing had happened. Except she kept checking her phone every 2 seconds, fingers twitching across the screen. That night, when she was asleep beside me, I pulled out my phone. I typed Crystal into Google, added some physical details that matched Diana. What came up made my chest tighten like a vice. Video after video. Adult sites. Hundreds of clips featuring a woman who looked exactly like my wife. Same body. Same face. Same voice. Her stage name? Crystal Diamond. And the dates on those videos? They went back 3 years. The exact 3 years Diana had been working from home as a freelance consultant. My hands shook as I clicked through. Millions of views. A butterfly tattoo on her hip that was impossible to deny, the same tattoo she'd gotten on our anniversary. I teased her then, called her my Crystal Diamond. The next morning I confronted her. You're Crystal Diamond, I said, barely recognizing my own voice. The plate slipped from her hands and shattered on the kitchen floor, scrambled eggs splattering across the tile. She didn't even try to deny it. She just dropped into a chair, shoulders shaking as she began to cry. But those tears, they didn't look real. They looked rehearsed. So I asked the only question that mattered. Where's the money? These sites get millions of views. Where's all that money from the past 3 years? Her sobs cut off instantly like someone had flipped a switch. Her face hardened, cold and calculating. $470,000, she said flatly. Offshore accounts. You'll never touch it. The air left my lungs. $500,000. While I'd been working 60-hour weeks at the warehouse, busting my back loading trucks, taking every bit of overtime I could, she'd been hoarding nearly $500,000 in secret. We'd been eating ramen every night. Sitting in the dark because the electricity got cut off twice last year. I'd even sold my father's old truck, the one he restored with his own 2 hands before he passed. I'd let it go for $3,000 just so we could afford her mother's funeral. And now she looked me in the eye and said, I make that much in a weekend doing private shows. My stomach twisted. Private shows? She said it casually like she was reading a grocery list. Men would pay thousands for a girlfriend experience, to pretend she was theirs for a night. $5,000 for dinner and a hotel room, sometimes on the exact nights she told me she was sick or busy with consulting work. Our anniversary dinner she skipped because of food poisoning? That was a booking. The nephew's graduation she missed for a work emergency? Another booking. The promotion party I celebrated alone while she claimed she had a migraine? Also a booking. All neatly documented on her public calendar. A calendar for Crystal Diamond. I couldn't even speak. My voice cracked when I finally whispered, why? She shrugged, grabbed her keys, and tossed out 2 words that broke me completely. Because I could. Then she dropped another bomb. The house? The one I'd been pouring my time, money, and sweat into for years? It was in her name now. That refinancing paperwork she'd convinced me to sign 6 months ago, she'd taken me off the deed entirely. And just like that, she said she had a shoot downtown at the Marriott. Told me she needed me out by the weekend so she could turn our basement into her studio. She smirked at me from the doorway, scrolling through her phone. Oh, by the way, she added without even looking up, you should probably get tested. The clinic on 3rd Street takes walk-ins. Mention my name, you'll even get a discount. The door slammed. I watched her tail lights vanish around the corner. My body refused to move. The shattered plate and drying eggs were still on the floor. My knees buckled and I collapsed right there, jeans soaking up the mess. For a long time I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't do anything but stare at the empty kitchen that no longer felt like my home. Eventually my hands found my phone. I started taking pictures of the broken plate, the mug, the refinancing documents I dug from the filing cabinet. My signature mocked me from the page. When I opened our bank account, my stomach dropped again. $12.37. Yesterday it had been over $800. She must have drained it that morning right before walking out the door. I shuffled through the stack of bills on the counter, electricity, water, gas, all stamped with bright red final notice. She hadn't paid a thing in months. Then my phone buzzed. A text from my supervisor. Where are you? I looked at the clock. I was already 20 minutes late. I typed back, family emergency. His reply was instant, you're out of sick days. Any time off is unpaid. Unpaid. And I had $12 to my name. It took me 10 more minutes before my legs would even hold me up again. And that's when it hit me, this wasn't just betrayal. This was annihilation. I drove to the warehouse on autopilot, barely aware of the roads passing under my tires. The whole trip was a blur, like I was trapped inside someone else's body. By the time I clocked in, I couldn't even remember the drive. That morning shift dragged by like molasses. Tasks I'd been doing for years, muscle memory stuff I could normally handle half asleep, I was screwing them up. Mislabeling boxes, fumbling paperwork, dropping things. My supervisor's eyes kept flicking toward me with that look, that quiet warning. But he didn't say a word yet. By lunch, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I found Ivan in the break room, unwrapping a sandwich. I sat across from him, and the second he saw my face, he set his food down. His eyes went wide. Man, what happened? And then it all came spilling out. Diana. Crystal Diamond. The offshore accounts. The house. Every ugly, humiliating detail. I was half whispering, half rambling, the words tumbling out so fast I could barely breathe. When I finally stopped, Ivan just stared at me, mouth hanging open like I'd been speaking another language. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he said, "You can crash on my couch. As long as you need." I almost lost it right there in front of him. The relief hit so hard I felt my throat close up. My vision blurred and I had to swallow back the burn in my chest. Ivan gave me this awkward pat on the shoulder, like he wasn't sure how to comfort me. "My girlfriend might not love it," he added with a weak laugh, "but she'll get it." I wanted to hug him. Instead, I just nodded, because if I said one more word, I would have broken down in that break room. The rest of my shift vanished in a haze. Trucks, pallets, paperwork, just noise in the background while the same thought kept looping in my head. 3 days. Where the hell am I going to be sleeping in 3 days? After clocking out, I sat in my car for a long time before starting the engine. My hands were shaking on the wheel. The 3rd Street clinic Diana had mentioned wasn't far. 15 minutes. I couldn't stop replaying her parting words, the casual cruelty in her voice. "You should probably get tested." So I drove. The waiting room was packed. Every single person in there staring down at their phones, avoiding each other's eyes. A teenager with headphones. An old man fiddling with his watch. And me sitting in the middle, trying not to look like my whole world was collapsing. At the desk, I gave my insurance card. The receptionist asked whose plan it was under. "Diana's," I said. And that's when everything shifted. She froze, looked up at me with this strange pity, her voice softening. "We'll call you back soon. Have a seat." That look, like she knew. Like half the city already knew. 2 hours crawled by before they finally called me back. A nurse drew my blood, handed me a cup. I went through the motions, numb. She told me results would take 3 to 5 days. 3 to 5 days of hell. I walked out of there branded, like everyone in the world could see the shame stamped across my forehead. By the time I pulled back into the driveway, the sun had gone down. Diana's car wasn't there. Probably off at another hotel, another shoot. I heated a can of soup and ate it standing at the counter, because sitting at the table felt too normal, too much like we were still a couple. At 9 o'clock my phone buzzed. A text from her. "Are you still at the house?" No concern. No emotion. Just words, like she was asking if I'd remembered to pick up groceries. I typed back, "Yes. I'll be out by Saturday like you wanted." Her reply came instantly. A thumbs up emoji. A damn thumbs up. 3 years of marriage, thousands of lies, and that's what I got. I couldn't bring myself to step into our bedroom. The whole room reeked of her perfume, the expensive kind she'd wear to her so-called consulting meetings. The smell hit me like a punch, twisting my stomach. Instead, I grabbed an old blanket from the closet and made a nest on the couch. The ceiling stain above me stared back like some ugly reminder of all the things I'd been planning to fix. Except now it wasn't mine to fix. It was hers. Or Crystal's. Whoever she was. I lay there wide awake until 3 in the morning, my brain tearing through every memory like an investigator at a crime scene. What had I missed? How many red flags had I ignored? When Friday morning came, I couldn't face work. I called in sick, even knowing it meant losing a day's pay, money I desperately needed. But I had to do something, anything, that made me feel like I wasn't just letting her destroy me. So I opened my laptop and started searching tenant rights. Page after page of legal jargon, my eyes burning. Even without being on the deed, I might still have rights as an established tenant. There was a legal aid clinic downtown that offered free consultations. The earliest appointment? 3 weeks out. Way too late to stop her from kicking me out. Still, I booked it. Because it was something. And something was better than nothing. Then I dug into the filing cabinet. Pulled every bank statement I could find. Every receipt. I started building a spreadsheet, line by line, proof of everything I'd poured into that house over 3 years. Mortgage payments, $18,000. Utilities, $11,000. Home repairs, another $13,000, water heater, roof patch, furnace repair, driveway ceiling, bathroom tiles I laid myself. $42,000. My money. My sweat. My life. All traceable, all documented. It had to mean something in court. By the time my alarm went off the next morning for work, my eyes were bloodshot, but the spreadsheet was saved 3 different ways and emailed to myself. At the warehouse, exhaustion was eating me alive. My hands weren't steady. I tipped over a stack of boxes with the forklift, loaded the wrong shipment, botched the inventory. Strike after strike. After lunch, my supervisor called me into his office. "Shut the door. You okay?" he asked quietly. "At home, I mean." I sat there, staring at my hands. "I'm going through a divorce. I've got to move out by the weekend." He nodded slowly, rubbing his temple. "I get it. But you need to focus. Mistakes like this cost money. I promised him I'd pull it together. Walked back out onto the floor and forced myself to slow down. Double-check every pallet, every label, every entry. Because if I lost this job too, then I'd really have nothing left. When I pulled into the driveway that night, my stomach dropped. Diana's car was there, but parked right beside it was a white van I didn't recognize. My pulse kicked up instantly. I stepped inside and found Diana in the living room, smiling like a hostess at some business mixer. Two guys I'd never seen before were lugging in cases of equipment, cameras, tripods, light rigs. "These are my colleagues," she said smoothly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Colleagues. Right. They didn't even bother pretending otherwise as they headed straight for the basement. A few minutes later, I heard drills chewing into the walls, furniture scraping across the floor, voices echoing up through the vents. They were turning my house into her studio while I stood in the kitchen reheating pasta that tasted like cardboard. I ate it leaning against the counter, listening to their footsteps pounding above my head until nearly midnight. Every thud was another nail in the coffin of our marriage. Saturday morning, I was at the clinic before it even opened. Same worn-out chairs. Same hollow silence of people refusing to meet each other's eyes. After an hour, they finally called me back. A woman named Gabriella came in with my results. Clipboard in hand, voice calm but clinical. "You're negative for everything at this time," she said. Relief crashed over me for about 3 seconds. Then she kept talking. "But some infections have window periods. You'll need to retest in 3 months. 3 more months of not knowing. 3 months of doubt rotting in the back of my head." She handed me a packet of papers about safe practices and exposure risks. I asked what the odds were that something would show up later. She gave me the kind of careful, measured answer that meant, "It's possible." I didn't explain. Couldn't. I just nodded and walked out with the papers clutched in my hand like a scarlet letter. Monday, I cornered my supervisor on break. Asked if I could pick up more shifts, anything extra. I needed money for a deposit fast. He shook his head. Business was slow. Overtime cut. He promised to let me know if something opened up, but it was clear, the timing couldn't be worse. That afternoon, desperation had me calling title companies about the refinancing Diana pushed on me 6 months ago. The first 2 wouldn't even give me the time of day, confidential information since I wasn't on the deed. The third was polite but firm. Without a lawyer, there was nothing they could do for me. Tuesday morning, I tried the bank directly. After being bounced around to 4 different people, someone finally confirmed it. My name was gone. Legally, the house was hers. My signature was right there on the documents. Binding. Final. "Can I contest it?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "You'd have to speak with an attorney, sir. We can't provide legal advice." Each call left me feeling smaller, more cornered. By Wednesday, I was burning through law offices like lottery tickets. Half wanted money just to talk to me. Finally, Bryce Myers' office picked up. They had an opening Monday. The receptionist casually dropped the number, $5,000 retainer. I almost hung up. But I forced myself to keep the appointment. Maybe they'd let me pay in pieces. Maybe. By Friday, I was desperate enough to try Diana's laptop while she was out. She'd changed every password. Locked me out completely. But her site, the Crystal Diamond site, was still on my phone. The calendar showed 3 appointments booked for that weekend. 3 men. 3 stacks of money that dwarfed my monthly paycheck. Sunday night, she waltzed in with takeout from the Chinese place we used to treat ourselves to for anniversaries. She unpacked cartons like nothing was wrong. "Want to eat with me?" she asked casually. I stayed on the couch. My chest burned. She shrugged. "House'll be all mine tomorrow anyway." She sat at our table, scrolling through her phone, laughing at texts while noodles dangled from her chopsticks. The normalcy of it was almost more brutal than if she'd screamed in my face. Monday came and I dragged myself into Bryce Myers' office. A strip mall law firm between a nail salon and a payday loan place, yeah, confidence-inspiring. Bryce couldn't have been more than 30, wearing a wrinkled suit that looked borrowed. His laptop hinge was literally taped together. Still, he listened. Took notes. Then leaned back and gave me the truth. Because Diana had the deed, I was basically screwed. We could fight for marital assets, maybe argue deception, but it would take months. Years. And money I didn't have. When I started to leave, he stopped me. Offered to take the case for $2,500 down, with monthly payments. He said he knew what it felt like to lose everything. And I believed him. So I signed. Even though I'd have to sell more of my father's things just to cover it, I signed. He slid me a yellow legal pad and told me to list every asset, every debt. The page looked pitiful when I was done. 2 maxed-out credit cards. An ancient Honda on its last legs. Some thrift store furniture. Meanwhile, Diana had siphoned off nearly $500,000 into accounts I couldn't touch. Every line on that list drove the knife deeper. She hadn't just left me with nothing. She'd made sure of it. Bryce told me to start pulling every bank statement from the past 3 years. Build my case brick by brick. That evening, I found Ivan in the parking lot before our shift. "Is your couch still open?" I asked, voice low. "Because Diana wants me out tonight." He didn't hesitate. "Yeah. Let's move your stuff after work." The hours crawled by. When 5 o'clock hit, Ivan followed me home. Diana was already waiting in the doorway, arms crossed, expression smug. She reminded me, loudly, that anything bought for the house stayed in the house. Even the microwave I'd bought with birthday money. She filmed us the entire time with her phone, narrating like I was some petty thief. Ivan and I carried out 3 boxes. That was all I had left after 7 years of marriage. 1 box of clothes. 1 of my father's tools. 1 of books and papers. 3 boxes. That was it. We drove in silence to Ivan's apartment. His girlfriend's face said everything when we walked in. She'd agreed to 2 weeks, no more. I thanked her, swore I'd be gone as soon as possible. That night, I curled up on their couch with a blanket she handed me like it was charity. And for the first time, it sank in. Diana still had the house. The money. The basement filled with cameras and lights. And me? I had 3 boxes and a borrowed couch. Tuesday morning, my phone buzzed before the sun was even up. 6:30 a.m. A message from Diana. She'd already changed all the locks. Attached was a photo of shiny new deadbolts, thick black metal ones, nicer than anything we'd ever owned together in 7 years of marriage. The caption, "Don't come back. If I see you near the property, I'll call the cops." That was it. No pretense left. I was officially homeless except for Ivan's couch. I texted her back, asking if I could at least get my father's old workbench from the garage. Her reply came fast. "It's attached to the house. It stays." It was so perfectly cruel I had to sit down. Every move she made was like it had been designed to strip away one more piece of me. Wednesday, I had to leave work halfway through my shift to meet a police officer at the house. Civil standby, they called it. He looked annoyed before we even started, glancing at his watch every other minute. Diana let us in with a smirk, camera already rolling on her phone. Every step I took, she narrated like I was a burglar. I grabbed what little was left, my dad's hand tools, a few papers I couldn't risk losing. My birth certificate. Social security card. Diana tried to argue even those weren't mine, but the officer shut her down. 20 minutes and it felt like 20 hours. Walking through that house, hearing her heels clicking behind me, her phone pointed at my back, it was torture. Ivan's apartment was cramped, but it beat sleeping in my car. His girlfriend barely spoke to me, retreating to their bedroom most nights to avoid me. I understood. Who wants a stranger with 3 cardboard boxes camped on their couch? So I made myself useful. Bought groceries, scrubbed the bathroom until it smelled like bleach, vacuumed the floors every day. Ivan told me I didn't need to, but I couldn't just sit there, eating their food and taking up space, without giving something back. Thursday, an email popped up during my shift. Results from the clinic, negative. For now. Relief surged through me until the phone rang an hour later. Gabriella from the clinic. Calm, professional voice. Some infections take longer to show up. You'll need to come back in 12 weeks. 3 months. 3 months of waiting, wondering, second-guessing every headache, every ache in my body. By Friday, I cornered my supervisor again, practically begging for steadier hours. Apartments wanted proof of income, and my paychecks had been all over the place. He sighed, said he'd try, but business was slow. No guarantees. Word had gotten around the warehouse by then. People whispered, stared. Some offered pity beers after work, but I couldn't afford a round of cheap draft, let alone pretend to be okay. The following week, Bryce officially filed the divorce papers. He warned me Diana would drag her feet, stall, twist the knife any way she could. She had money for a long, bloody legal fight. I didn't. The process server tried 3 times to deliver the papers. She never answered, even with her car in the driveway. Meanwhile, her Instagram showed selfies from inside the house. Laughing. Posing. Drinking wine under my roof while she pretended she wasn't home. Games. Always games. Tuesday, my phone went dark at work. Wouldn't even power on. I checked the carrier site on a coworker's computer. Account terminated by the primary holder. Diana. She'd cut my line like it was nothing. That night, I walked into a dingy strip mall phone store and bought the cheapest prepaid flip phone they had. $30. It looked like something from a museum. Every text cost 10 cents and I had to type each word with the number pad, like it was 2005 again. My first message was to Ivan. Then my supervisor. Then my mom. She called me back immediately crying, saying she never trusted Diana. That was a lie, but I let her rewrite history. If it made her feel better, fine. I didn't have the strength to argue. The next morning, I noticed a flyer in the break room, Employee Assistance Program. Free counseling, 3 sessions. I called during lunch. The woman on the phone sounded half asleep until I explained. My wife was living a double life as an adult entertainer. Her voice sharpened. Suddenly she had openings that week. That first session was in a tiny office above a dentist, the whole place smelling like mouthwash. The therapist looked barely out of school. She kept writing notes, eyes wide as I laid everything out. She asked how I felt. Over and over. I didn't want to talk about feelings. I wanted someone to tell me how to survive. But I used the whole 50 minutes anyway, just unloading. She looked relieved when the timer went off, scheduling the next session like she couldn't wait to hand me off. Thursday, Bryce called with a lead. A property lawyer, Damon Montoya, willing to review our refinancing for a flat $300. I met him that afternoon. His office was chaos, piles of papers everywhere, like the walls were made of file folders. He dug through my documents with a magnifying glass, muttering, shaking his head. Then he found it. On the refinancing application, Diana had claimed she was the sole owner of the house. 6 months ago. Before divorce was even filed. Fraud. Thin but real. It might give us leverage, Damon said. If we can prove she misrepresented ownership to the bank. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. That night, I made the mistake of looking up her Instagram. Public. Bright. Shiny. That morning she'd posted a photo, yoga in the living room, captioned, living my truth, loving every moment. Comments filled with heart emojis and blind praise. Scrolling deeper, I saw our bedroom, except it wasn't ours anymore. Purple paint, crystal lamps, silk curtains. Professional portraits of her cropped into art prints. Videos of her cooking in copper pots we could never afford, preaching self-care, selling a dream life built on lies. I wanted to scream the truth in the comments, expose everything. But Bryce had been clear, keep quiet. Don't jeopardize the case. So I sat there, fists clenched, watching strangers cheer for the woman who'd gutted my life. Friday, the process server finally caught her at a downtown coffee shop. She'd been meeting someone, probably another client. He handed her the papers. She laughed. Said she'd been expecting it. Tipped him $20. Even divorce was just a joke to her. That night, my new flip phone started buzzing at midnight. Diana's number. Where's the water shut-off valve? At 2 a.m., thermostat isn't working. At 3:30, how do you reset the garage door? Each message yanked me out of a shallow, restless sleep on Ivan's couch. I didn't answer a single one. Bryce's warning echoed in my head, no communication. Besides, she wanted the house so badly. She could figure out how to run it herself. The messages kept coming all weekend. Each one angrier than the last. Saturday morning, I loaded my father's tools into the back of Ivan's truck. Each piece clanged against the metal bed, and with every sound it felt like something inside me broke a little more. These weren't just tools, they were pieces of my father's life, passed down to me like sacred relics. His 1978 socket set, the same one he used to rebuild engines in our garage. The drill press he'd bought the year I was born. The hand planes he'd inherited from his father before him. Generations of sweat and history. But Bryce needed the retainer, and without money I had no case. The first pawn shop barely looked at me before offering $500 for the lot. The guy smirked like he was doing me a favor. I walked out without a word. The second shop gave me $1,200, which was better, but still an insult. The third place, an old man with grease-stained hands and eyes that lit up when he recognized what I'd brought, took the time to test each tool. He gave me $2,000 in cash laid out in neat stacks. 90 days to buy him back, he said gently. We both knew that wasn't happening. I drove away with the envelope heavy in my pocket and a hollow pit in my chest. Monday, Bryce filed subpoenas for Diana's bank records and the payment history from the Crystal Diamond site. Predictably, her lawyer fired back immediately, claiming it was an invasion of privacy and a threat to her business interests. Every motion they filed was another bill on my end. Bryce warned me his reduced fee wouldn't stretch forever. Diana's team knew exactly how to bleed me dry. And then there were the texts. The water shutoff. The thermostat. The garage door. Half the time I wondered if she really didn't know how her own house worked, or if it was just bait, a trap to get me to break the no-contact rule. The counseling sessions, they helped in ways I didn't expect. The young therapist still looked like she wanted to crawl out of the room whenever I talked, but she pushed me to face things I'd buried. The business trips that made no sense. The sale racks that somehow produced designer dresses. The way she guarded her phone like it held nuclear codes. I hadn't missed the signs. I'd chosen not to see them. Because if I did, I'd have had to admit my whole marriage was a fraud. She mentioned support groups for betrayed spouses. I wasn't ready for that. Sitting in a circle talking about how my wife had destroyed me? No thanks. 3 hours of therapy hadn't even scratched the surface of the humiliation. Sunday night, Ivan's girlfriend finally sat me down at their kitchen table. Ivan sat beside her, shifting uncomfortably like he already knew what was coming. You can't stay here forever, she said. 2 weeks. That was the deadline. I nodded, tried to look understanding, but inside I was panicking. Deposits, credit checks, proof of income, I didn't have any of it. Monday at work, I started combing through apartment listings on my lunch break. Anything with no credit check was either in a neighborhood you didn't survive long in, or wanted $3,000 up front for a roach-infested shoebox. 11 days until I was on the street. That same day, my supervisor caught me staring at my phone and asked if I'd consider switching to nights. $2 more an hour. I said yes before he even finished the sentence. The first night shift was brutal. 11 at night until 7:30 in the morning, my body begging for sleep at the wrong times. But those 16 extra bucks a shift added up to $400 more a month. $400 closer to a deposit. The warehouse was eerie at night, quiet, hollow. Just me, the hum of forklifts, and too much time to think about Diana laughing with strangers while I sweated in the dark. Most mornings, I dragged myself back to Ivan's couch while construction crews next door hammered and drilled, keeping me from getting more than a few restless hours of sleep. Midweek, I drove past the house to pick up stray mail. My stomach clenched when I saw it. Security cameras. Motion sensor floodlights. Every corner fortified like a fortress. She was protecting the palace she'd stolen, while I couldn't even secure a place to sleep. I sat in my car, staring at the paint job I'd finished last summer, the flowers I'd planted, the driveway I'd patched with my own hands. Something inside me snapped. I turned the corner, parked where no one could see me, and screamed until my throat burned raw and my voice cracked into silence. 2 weeks later, the first court hearing finally came. Temporary orders. I showed up in my only decent shirt. Diana walked in wearing designer clothes I didn't even recognize. Her lawyer was polished, sharp suit, leather briefcase. Bryce walked in with folders held together by rubber bands. The judge looked like she'd already had enough before we even started. Diana's lawyer claimed she had no steady income, just modest investments, conveniently leaving out the empire she'd built as Crystal Diamond. The judge wasn't buying it, I could tell, but she said she needed more evidence before issuing orders. 60 more days. Mediation in the meantime. 60 days might as well have been 60 years. After court, Bryce pulled me aside. His voice was low, heavy. We may need to think about settlement instead of trial. Trials cost tens of thousands. With her offshore accounts, she can outspend us until there's nothing left. I wanted to scream. To fight. To drag her through the mud the way she'd done to me. But the numbers didn't lie. If I didn't settle, I could end up broke and empty-handed. That night, I found one sliver of control. Diana had forgotten to take me off our shared car insurance. After 7 years, my name was still on the policy. I called the company, canceled it effective immediately. An hour later, the text started. First confused. Then furious. Then threatening. You're pathetic. This proves I was right to cut you out. I didn't care. Not anymore. The next morning, I opened my own bank account for the first time since we'd merged everything years ago. The banker asked about financial goals. Savings plans. Retirement. I almost laughed in her face. My only goal was surviving the week. Maybe, if I was lucky, scraping together enough for a key to a door that locked behind me. She handed me glossy pamphlets about investments and retirement planning. I threw them in the trash on my way out. Because right now, my entire future fit in 3 cardboard boxes, and the hope that one day I'd claw my way out of this mess. 3 days later, I opened my phone and nearly dropped it. Diana had posted a glossy video tour of our house, only now she was calling it her studio. The basement, where we used to keep boxes of Christmas decorations and the old recliner her uncle gave us, was gone. In its place, high-end lights, cameras on tripods, soundproofing on the walls. She panned the camera around like a proud businesswoman showing off her empire. The video blew up, hundreds of likes, comments flooding in. People praising her, calling her inspiring, asking how they could start their own business. Mutual friends even started texting me. What happened between you two? Why aren't you living there anymore? I wanted to scream the truth. I wanted to blast out every filthy detail about Crystal Diamond, about the lies, about the $600,000 she'd hidden. But Bryce's voice echoed in my head, anything you say in public can hurt the case. Don't look vindictive. So I swallowed it. Replied with one line, we're getting divorced. And left it at that while she played the victim online. Ivan, trying to help, found an apartment listing in a neighborhood people usually avoided after dark. No credit check, no massive deposit. We drove over. The building was ancient, hallways stinking of cigarettes and something worse I couldn't identify. The studio apartment was barely bigger than a closet. Water stains spread across the ceiling, the kitchen nothing more than a hot plate and a mini fridge shoved into a corner. $800 a month, the landlord said, leaning against his car in the parking lot where he apparently ran the entire building. First month cash and you can move in tonight. It was depressing. It was humiliating. But it was mine. Ivan helped me load my 3 boxes into his truck and drop them off. His girlfriend didn't say much, her sigh of relief said it all. The walls in the new place were thin. Too thin. I could hear every fight, every TV show, every argument in the apartments next to me. But when I shut my own door, turned the lock and slid the bolt into place, it was the first door in months that was actually mine. 2 days after moving in, the clinic called. A reminder for my 3-month follow-up. The same waiting room. The same plastic chairs. The same silence thick with shame as everyone stared at their phones, pretending not to notice each other. Some of the same faces I remembered from before. Gabriella called me back after 40 minutes. Drew my blood, made small talk about the weather, handed me another set of pamphlets. Results in a week, she said. Call if you notice symptoms before then. I didn't. But that didn't stop the anxiety from gnawing at me, every second of every day. A week later, Bryce called while I was on break at the warehouse. The records are in. I clocked out early, heart pounding as I drove to his office. When I walked in, a stack of papers sat on his desk, thicker than a phone book. Every page full of numbers that made my stomach turn. Bryce had already combed through it, yellow highlighter and sticky notes marking the damning details. Total income, $600,000. Not $470. $600. Diana had lied even about that, hiding an extra $130,000 in places we'd probably never touch. The booking logs listed hotel after hotel, private sessions scheduled during time she'd told me she was at yoga, visiting her sister, or stuck in traffic. Every lie we lived through had a $sign attached. Bryce explained the offshore accounts would cost more to chase than we'd ever recover. Diana had picked banks in countries that specialized in hiding money. What we could go after was the money in U.S. banks, and that was still enough to fight over. Mediation was set for Tuesday. I showed up in my only suit, the one I'd bought years ago for job interviews that no longer fit right across the shoulders. Diana walked in dressed like royalty, designer clothes that probably cost more than my car. Her attorney carried a leather briefcase that screamed money. We sat at opposite ends of a long conference table while the mediator explained the rules. Diana's lawyer went first. His generous offer? $20,000 if I walked away, signed everything, and shut up forever. I felt heat rising in my chest, my fists curling under the table. I wanted to shout about the 3 years I lived on ramen while she raked in 20 grand a month. But Bryce's coaching kept me still. He calmly countered, half the house value plus 100,000 of her proven earnings. Diana laughed. Not a nervous laugh, a cold, sharp bark that made my skin crawl. I'd rather pay my lawyers every penny than give him that. 3 hours dragged by, back and forth, numbers tossed across the table like knives. Eventually she nodded, reluctant but smug. 60,000 paid over 2 years in monthly installments. Unfair. Miserable. But survivable. I signed. It felt like defeat but also like release. 2 weeks later, the first payment hit my brand new bank account. I used it immediately to put a deposit down on a better place. Still small. Still modest. But it was in a safer neighborhood, where sirens didn't scream every night. The property manager ran my credit, gave me a look when he saw the mess, but didn't ask questions. Didn't dig. Just handed me the lease. The new apartment had real kitchen cabinets. A window with trees outside instead of a cracked parking lot. Moving day? 3 boxes and a cheap air mattress. That was it. But as I stood there in the empty living room, sunlight filtering through the blinds, I realized something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. The final test. 3 months after that first humiliating morning at the clinic, I found myself back in the same waiting room, the same hard plastic chairs, the same heavy silence where nobody made eye contact. My leg wouldn't stop bouncing, my palms slick with sweat. Every worst-case scenario I'd tortured myself with for weeks pressed down on me like a weight I couldn't shake. Gabriella finally called my name. She greeted me with the same calm professionalism, her voice steady as she slid the tourniquet on my arm and drew the blood. She didn't ask questions, didn't look at me with pity, just did her job. I appreciated that more than I could say. A week later, my phone rang. Her voice on the line. All tests came back negative. I had to sit down. My knees simply gave out. Relief hit me so hard I felt dizzy, lightheaded, like I'd been holding my breath for months and could finally exhale. Gabriella told me I was lucky, reminded me to be more careful with partners in the future. I didn't have the heart to tell her the truth, that I couldn't imagine having a partner again anytime soon. Maybe ever. The divorce was finalized a month after mediation. I sat in the courtroom, staring at the back of Diana's head while the judge flipped through papers like it was just another item on his to-do list. He signed the decree without even glancing up. Just like that, it was over. Diana walked away with the house and most of the money she'd hidden. I walked away with $60,000 spread out over 2 years and my freedom. It wasn't justice. Not even close. But it was closure. A legal document that said I'd never have to call her my wife again. 3 months after my world detonated in that kitchen, I stood in my tiny one-bedroom apartment unpacking the first real belongings I'd bought for myself. A bed frame so I didn't have to wake up on an air mattress that deflated halfway through the night. A couch from the thrift store. A second-hand table with mismatched chairs. Real plates and cups instead of paper ones. It was humble. It was small. But it was mine. The settlement money wasn't enough to erase the years of lies or bring back what I'd lost. It never could. But it was a start. A foundation. Something real. Diana, no Crystal Diamond, was still out there, building her empire, posting curated snapshots of her life online. Ivan told me she had thousands of followers cheering her on, oblivious to the wreckage she'd left behind. And me? I clocked into the warehouse at 11 p.m. and worked until the sun came up, every shift leaving my body aching, but the pay a little steadier now with nights. Not glamorous. Not enviable. But honest. For the first time in years, I was building something that wasn't a lie. Something that was truly mine. Thanks for watching. Today's train wreck is over, but tomorrow's ride is already on track. Subscribe so you don't miss it.